Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this evening's discussion about economic security in Pasco County during the COVID outbreak, hosted by the Pasco unit of the League of Women Voters of Hillsborough County. My name is Chris Kahn. I'm the Voter Services Chair and a Pasco resident, and I'm really excited to hear this conversation this evening. It touches my heart. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Voters are empowered when they are informed about issues of concerns to communities and when they understand the role played by government and other organizations working in the public policy and services arena. We have 4 panel members here tonight who will share their expertise and perspective about tonight's topic, economic security in Pasco County. I'd like to introduce our panelists, and you can wave when I introduce your name. We have Marcy Esbjerg, Director of Pasco County's Government Community Development Department, my apologies. Brian Hoben, Community Services Director in Pasco County. Don Anderson, CEO of the Pasco Homeless Coalition, and Mike Bishop, Director of Stakeholder Engagement at the Pasco Economic Development Council. We have a few housekeeping tips. Cindy, put that slide up just to go over before we get started.
Certainly.
And I don't have them memorized, so we do have to have the slide. To everyone, if you can, we will be taking questions in the chat, so you can enter any questions at any time into the chat. We do have someone monitoring that. Please remain muted with your video off during the presentation. It does help with the network and the quality of the presentation. Again, a chat reader will ask your questions of the panelists when it is time. And we appreciate your assistance in conducting this event. We are going to have each panelist present information to you, followed by a no more than 5 minute period of questions. After all the panelists have presented, there will be another section of questions for the panelists and discussion. So we'll get started with our first panelist who are going to present jointly. We have Marcy Esbjerg, who serves as the Director of Pasco County's Community Development Department. She oversees the homeless initiatives, neighborhood revitalization, affordable housing opportunities, and community partnerships implemented with federal and state grants. She arrived in Pasco in 2018 and brought with her 22 years of experience working with the city of Burlington in Vermont, as well as county government in Collier County, Florida. Her experience includes 10 years of assisting over 500 low and moderate income families become homeowners via unique public-private partnership with a banking consortium. Brian Hoben joined Pasco County in July of 2016 as an accountant and quickly rose to become the program administrator for the public services branch in that role. Brian worked in a junior level executive capacity. He acted as a liaison for Pasco County's assistant county administrator for public services and the branch level directors on department, branch, and organizational level projects. Since March 25th in 2020, he's been in the role of Community Service Director and helps to lead 3 divisions: Human Services, Senior Services, and Misdemeanor Probation. So at this time, I will turn it over to Marcy and Brian.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here and to share all the great things that are happening in Pasco County and the very robust programs that we have in place to help our citizens recover from COVID-19 in the economic arena.
Absolutely. I want to echo Marcy's sentiment there. And with that, for time's sake, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in here. I want to talk a little bit about where we've come from before we highlight where we're at and some of the programs that we have here in the future. So this particular slide highlights some of the programs that Pasco County has implemented in 2020 and some of the assistance that we've provided. So you'll notice that there are 3 separate.
Excuse me, Brian, the slide did not go forward from my view. Can everyone see this slide with I just see the entries, the first slide still. You might have to, sometimes you have to click on it so it lets you go. There you go, up there. Return to slideshow.
Can you guys see that? You guys don't see it moving?
No,
Okay, hang on.
technology.
How about this? Can you see that?
Yes,
right.
perfect. Thank you
change-
so much.
I'll change it manually. Okay, we're good. Let me just start by saying again, I just want to highlight some of the programs that Pasco County had implemented in 2020. This slide's going to depict those, and really these three main programs, two of which are really the same program, just implemented in different ways. So let's start with the top one, Community Cares. That was a program that Pasco County had implemented back in May of 2020, really to combat the financial hardships that a lot of our citizens were being faced with due to COVID-19. It was a program that we utilized to administer funding to help citizens with mortgage, rent, and utility bills. Again, we implemented it in May and it ran through the end of 2020. We utilized CARES Act funding to implement that program. And we had citizens apply through a portal where we gathered source documentation, verified their information, and provided funding on behalf of them to pay those bills. It was something that we did to really take on the earnest of making sure that we were doing our part to make sure that anyone who was suffering these financial hardships received funding and we could continue to help out those citizens. This was done by the Human Services team, coupled with that bottom program was conducted by our Community Development team, and they actually worked with local partner agencies to administer the exact same program, just capacity. So between those two programs, you can see holistically, we served approximately 2,800 citizens and awarded approximately $8 million to help with those financial aspects. And then, of course, the Community Development team also implemented a coronavirus relief fund that really focused on assisting with mortgage payments, buy downs, and emergency repairs. So holistically, between these three programs, the Human Services Division and the Community Development Department has again roughly awarded citizens and helped out financially with nearly $10 million in past due bills to help with citizens who were in a lot of trouble with arrears rent, could be facing eviction, and a lot of other issues that COVID really spiked. So we're also very proud to say that the 2020 Team of the Year Award was awarded to the Pasco Cares team just for the collaboration with all the other departments that it took to come together and administer those programs. The Pasco County Senior Services Division also was faced with many challenges in regards to their levels of service from a normal day-to-day operation standpoint. They had to come up with a few programs themselves to make sure that their levels of service remain the same. And I want to highlight two of those here tonight. Number one, the Dining Out at Home program, which is a partnership between the Area Agency on Aging of Pasco and Panelists and our local restaurants. And really what we did is we provided funding to our local restaurants in the beginning of the pandemic so that they could cook meals and we could take those meals and provide them to food insecure senior citizens. And this did two things for us. Number one, it re-engaged the economy in the beginning of the pandemic for all those local restaurants that shut down and didn't have any work. And it also allowed us to continue to provide meals for those seniors who, again, were food insecure as we continue to deliver those meals. You'll see that we administered almost 70,000 meals just through that program. And we also created a drive-through program for the seniors who typically come to our dining sites and do congregate dining with us. That was an idea of one of our senior center coordinators. She said, hey, let's come up with a way to continue to implement and provide food, but let's make sure our seniors can stay in their car and remain socially distant, safe. And that program was such a good idea that it actually was adopted as a statewide best practice from the Florida Department of Elderly Affairs. And through that program, another 60,000 meals were implemented. So holistically in 2020, Senior Services served over 300,000 meals, which is actually roughly 50% more meals than what we've served in 2019. So the amount of food that we've provided through the pandemic doubled just because of the creativity and trying to, remain ahead of, changing tides, if you will. So big kudos to that team.
So as Brian said, we've had to pivot and do some new programming, and we're going to be spending most of our time talking about what is our current program called HEART. But I did also want to acknowledge a few of our standard programs, which we do all the time in our office. And it's important, I think, in times where people are struggling financially to know that our department has several programs where we are trying to keep people housed and keep them from cycling into homelessness, which you'll hear more about from Don. But we do have a tax payment assistance program for people that are falling behind, low-income people that are falling behind in their taxes and their real estate taxes. And so we do help them pay those. We could pay up to 3 years of their tax assistance. And we also have an owner-occupied rehab program. So for example, if there is a senior who is low income and they need a new roof or they need a new AC unit or anything like that, really to keep them safely housed, we would prefer to invest that than see them again cycle out of that home and into an unstable living situation. We also have quite a bit of money that comes in through our office called the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is specifically for homelessness prevention, as well as rapid rehousing and helping people experiencing homelessness. So these are part of our core mission that we work on, in addition to the new funding that has come through that our office with Brian's office have been deploying out into the community. So Brian, you could tell them all about HEART.
Absolutely. So what is HEART? HEART is really the Consolidated Appropriations Act that includes the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. It's funding distributed through the U.S. Treasury, and it provides housing stability to those households financially impacted by COVID-19. And more specifically, it provides rental and utilities assistance for tenants earning less than 80% of the area median income, which is very, very similar to the standard guidelines and regulations that we administered our CARES Act funding through. But we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into HEART. So who is getting the funding? This was provided to cities and counties with populations of 200,000 or more. Pasco County did apply, and we received an excess of $16.7 million. And the program has been implemented already. It's been implemented by our Human Services Division again, as well as Community Development, who is working with multiple outside agencies to administer it externally. This just depicts what the funds can be used for. 90% of the funds must be used for direct rental assistance, rental in arrears, utility and home energy costs in arrears, while they allow for 10% administrative costs for case management and for hiring on temporary employees, which we have already done so in both the Human Services Division as well as the Community Development Department. And the eligible households include 3 main aspects. So to qualify for this program, you need to hit these 3 aspects. You have to have an income level at or below 80% of the area median income. You have to have been financially impacted by COVID-19. That could, include a significant cost or expense or a financial hardship. And you have to demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability, which really by definition of the Treasury is having past due bills. And then we also have a prioritization method with the implementation of this program. So not only do we look at those 3 main caveats we just covered as kind of the basis for the way we administer the program, we give citizens with households that have an income below 50% AMI a prioritization, as well as households with individuals who have been unemployed for 90 days. So this program doesn't just take in everyone and serve them all at once. We try to make sure that the funding and the monies are getting to the individuals and the citizens most in need. And so therefore we're prioritizing these individuals based off of this criteria and the standards that are as they apply and as that comes in.
So this chart explains the area median income. I know that when we use terms like AMI, not everybody in our audience is familiar with those, but it really is the crux of almost every program that we deal with. So in order to read this chart, so if you were a family of 4, you would go right across. And so for a family of 4 earning less than 35,150, they would be considered very low income, under 50% AMI. And if they earn less than 56,250, then they would be 80% AMI. And we do consider everybody in the household. So that's how you gather what the area median income is, or that household income. And so, you know, to just emphasize that point about prioritization, this family of 4, you know, let's say Brian came in and he earned 34,000, and Marcy came in and my family earned 55,000. Brian's family would get served first based on having a greater need based on his income. And income levels change every year. So we are right around the time, March, April, when they change. So in case you hear of a different number, it's because it was updated, and that's what we would expect. So there are some key elements to this program on the next slide that are important for anybody to know about. One of the things that I'd like to just share is that we talked about our program, our CARES program, Community Cares or Pasco Cares, that we did in 2020. Well, that was a program that we designed. So we designed it in the county based on best practices. This program was designed by the US Treasury. So they said, here's the money and here's how we want you to operate it. They've given us a little bit of latitude, but these things are not there. So far, we haven't given you any latitude of what we implemented. So we can offer up to 12 months of rental assistance. Again, it is only a rental and utility assistance program. It does not cover mortgage assistance. We could go another 3 months if we needed to do that to ensure stability and funds are available. So that's 15 months of service of assistance that we could do. We always have to go arrears, provide the arrears before we could go further. And we have to provide future pay. If we provide future payments, household has to reapply. So we want to make sure that we get through the key elements of the program. How can renters apply? They could apply through either the Human Services Division in Pasco County, an online portal, or they could go with our nonprofit agencies in our community. And we have the information on our rounds and agencies. It's available online and through media releases. Brian, could you talk a little bit about your portal?
Absolutely. So the Human Services Portal for the HEART program initially launched on February 17th. We typically assign a certain amount of applicants that we could take. We took 500 spots, and we like to do that for customer service purposes, make sure that we could accurately provide that customer service, make sure that we could serve everybody and communicate very well and often. So we opened our portal, we took 500 applicants. Our team is currently comprised of 6 human services case managers, and we did use some of that 10% administrative cost to hire on an additional 7 temporary case management employees. And that team will more than likely grow throughout the program as the numbers for the program grow each launch. We have already encumbered roughly $386,000 of bills to pay on behalf of these applicants. Today marks the 22-day mark. Yesterday was the 3-week mark from when we have launched, and we are vastly approaching the $500,000 mark. And our next projected launch date will be around the beginning of April. Again, as Marcy mentioned, when we come up on our projected launches, we work very closely with our PIO office to make sure that we are putting this messaging out, not only in regards to the date, the time, but also that link to where citizens can go ahead and apply.
So let's make sure that everybody knows that there are several opportunities for our citizens to apply. We have partnered with several nonprofit agencies, and that list is here. And you could also get this list on our website, and you could go directly to them. So if there is a time when the portal isn't open and you still need that assistance, you can go to one of these agencies. If you go to the next slide, you could also see that you could use a portal, a screening tool with the Coalition for the Homeless, and you could put your information in there, or you could contact an agency directly for an application. This is the same program throughout. Everybody's doing the same thing. There's just various avenues. And I see our clock running out. Let me just say also that we are connecting with landlords as well. So if there's landlords, this is a unique part of the program, that if landlords have a tenant who are past due, but the tenant has not yet applied, we want to make sure that our landlords are taken care of. And so they could contact our office directly. We have hired on one person to be that liaison with the landlords, and they will help them get their tenants to apply. As a final word, I just want to say that in case anybody's concerned, every payment that is made goes directly to a landlord or to the utility companies. It does not get to an individual. So thank you for your time, and thank you. Be happy to answer any questions you have about the program.
Thank you, Marcy and Brian. That is a lot of information to take in, but sounds like we have a lot of great services that we're offering. I'm sure we have lots of questions. Sally, you are our chat reader. Would you like to ask our panelists some questions? I think you're muted. There you go.
Okay. Susan had asked, how does Pasco housing issues compare to the national average?
So if you are speaking about the response to COVID-19, you know,
I'm sorry? Did it freeze up?
No. So if it's in response to COVID-19, I think that throughout the country, everybody is experiencing some of the major issues. I think that we got ahead of the curve a little bit in 2020 when we took the CARES money that came to the county, and with board approval, took a portion of that money and got that out to our citizens for rent and mortgage assistance. So when you think about it, you know, now between that money and this money, we're looking at $26 million going out to our county to help citizens. That's a considerable amount. And I also think that by partnering with the county and our nonprofits, you know, our nonprofits really are close into the community and know people. So I think that's a nice partnership, so we can make sure that people get everything together. If we were having a bigger conversation about affordable housing, that you would need a whole nother subject on that.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add on that? Now Mike has asked for what, let's see, just a second. To what extent do you expect the recently signed Recovery Act to help with the Pasco citizens?
So Brian and I have been following that very closely, and we will be getting additional emergency rental assistance money. So this HEART program, which is helping emergency assistant relief for tenants, we'll be getting more of that money. So it won't end at $16 million. It will continue. And it won't end at the end of this year. My understanding is that funding will go a couple of years. So that'll be very significant. In the next bill, there will also be some mortgage money, foreclosure assistance coming through. I do not, last I heard, that might be going through DCF, which is not an agency that we are affiliated with. And I'm not sure, Brian, if you have any programs that are necessarily affiliated with DCF. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes into our community. But those are the two things that I know specifically with housing. And then we're also getting more money. We are an entitlement community. And so that means that in my office, we do community development block grant, home funding, and emergency solutions grant. And we will be getting a lot of home money, which is going to be used for affordable housing and helping with homelessness and building as well as renovations. So those are all good things for our community.
Okay. That's about all I see in the chat for now. So if you want to continue, Chris, with our next speaker.
Okay, we will go ahead and do so. And well, let me just ask the question I put in there, Sally, that you maybe didn't see. I had a question about what future projects do you hope to continue beyond COVID that you initiated during this time frame?
So Chris, I'll go ahead and speak from the community services aspect. I think that the pandemic has really forced a lot of us to think outside the box, change the way that we work, change the way that we serve the community. And I think that creativity has allowed us, specifically through some of the advent of the programs for senior services, has allowed us to serve the customer and our clients in different ways. So I hope that creativity and that encouragement, from our county administrator and from the Board of County Administrators continues to allow us to explore new avenues, because I think it's really allowed us to kind of open Pandora's box and take on different aspects of projects and serve our citizens in different ways. So I hope that continues. And I also think that it'll allow us the time to kind of reassess the community need. I think right now, through a lot of the funding that we're getting, it's being funneled to us, and we're focused on, okay, maybe this funding has restrictions on it. We need to help with rent, or we need to help with mortgage, or we need to help with this specific area. I think at some point we need to step back and we need to say, what is the true need in our community right now, as opposed to maybe getting these funding sources, provided to us and us implementing those programs. We need to step back. We need to listen to our citizens, whether it be through the citizen survey or any means of communication, but we need to see what the true need in our community is and see how we can create new programs to, give back to the citizens what they specifically need.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go on to our next panelist. Thank you both very much. I'm hoping we're going to have more questions at the end. Next, we will hear from Dawn Anderson. Dawn has 30 plus years of senior level experience in all facets of business, including strategic planning and positioning of businesses and products, fundraising, product development, sales management, operations, and team building for technology-focused companies and not-for-profit organizations. Currently, Dawn is president of the Leadership Pasco Board, is a Take Stock in Children mentor, past president of the Natural Coast AFP chapter. I don't know what AFP is, so you'll have to tell us. Vice president of Trinity Rotary, serves on the YFA Foundation Board. Is that youth, family, something?
Alternative.
Thank you, I couldn't remember that. And is treasurer of the State Association Florida Coalition to End Homelessness. He's the CEO of the Pasco Homeless Coalition. So welcome, Dawn. We are excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for the opportunity to address your members. I'm going to stick to the 10 minutes, and so I've added in the chat my cell phone number and email address, and I'd be happy to follow up after this because I'm really just going to be providing you snippets. There's 4 topics I'd like to address quickly. One is the role of the coalition and our current emphasis, which is a housing surge. And the need to identify rental units throughout the county for our homeless population. And then finally, I want to speak to the ALICE report, which is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed, which I think plays into our economic condition here in Pasco County. The coalition is a 501c6 not-for-profit organization, and we are the collaborative partner to HUD for our geography, which is the county, the entire county. And our responsibilities as the collaborative partner, there's really 4 or 5 primary things that we're responsible for. One is the formation of the continuum of care, which we refer to as a COC. This is and not a formal organization, but is really more of a loose affiliation. And it's to bring together all of the parties and resources that are associated with assisting households that are at risk of homelessness or those that are homeless. And to do this in the most effective and efficient manner possible. Currently, we meet as an organization each month, the last Thursday of the month by Zoom. And have as many as 50 participants in our meetings. All organizations and individuals are welcome to participate in the continuum of care. And I'm happy to say, Marcy is our chair of the Leadership Council, which is about 20 individuals that come to us by way of either their virtue of their office, let's say someone from the Sheriff's Department, or by virtue of the services they provide in the community. So, in addition to the COC, the continuum of care, we're also responsible to bring together all of the needs of the community relative to homelessness and to package it with our continuum of care members to apply for funding via HUD through what's referred to as NOFA, the Notice of Funding Available. And we do that every year. And it's really bringing together all the programmatic opportunities that we have in the county to serve those that are at risk or are homeless. And we do this to represent our entire catchment area of the county. In addition, the coalition is responsible for and offers to all of the organizations in the county our homeless management information system. We refer to it as HMIS. We provide it free to the community because we're supported by the county and other organizations. And we use that to track individuals and families that are in need of services. And this gives us the capacity to understand what the needs in the community are, who's satisfying them, and are we managing our clientele to the most effective means possible. And then finally, another element that we're responsible for is called the PIT count, the point in time count, which has to be performed annually for both sheltered and unsheltered individuals. We just concluded that 2 days ago, and we'll be reporting those numbers in the months to come. So that's an introduction to the coalition and to the COC. Now, our emphasis right now is on a housing surge. The county commissioners via community development and Marcy and her team allotted the coalition $3.8 million over 2 years to house 225 households in a span of months. And when I say households, that could be a single individual or it could be a family of 12. To date, we have housed 111 since December. And we're grateful to have these monies. And if there's any silver lining to the COVID pandemic, it's the monies that are coming down that allow us to address homelessness. So on the negative side of that is the difficulty we're having in identifying rental units here in Pasco. So we currently have a list of 150 individuals. We follow HUD guidelines very strictly on something called coordinated entry, where we actually identify via outreach all of the homeless individuals and families in the county, whether they're in the woods, on the streets, or in a car. And we work to enter them into our system. And at the same time, we do something called a vulnerability index, which gives us an opportunity to understand and compare the individuals and families that are homeless to recognize who is most vulnerable at this time. So at the top of the list, I can think of one individual. His name was Robert. He was elderly. He was in his late 60s. He lived in the woods for 10 years in a pup tent, had mental health issues as well as health issues. And it took us considerable time to get him into a motel and to work with him. But that's the process that we employ. We create this by name list, and we attack the individuals and families at the top of the list who are most vulnerable. So that is our effort right now. To combat the lack of rental units, we've created a Gmail account, Rent in Pasco, that's RENTIN Pasco @gmail.com. And we've asked the community, when you see a for rent sign, whether it's a room, an apartment, a trailer, a house, we want you to take a picture with your cell phone, and we want you to send it to rentinpasco@gmail.com. And we will, as soon as we get that from you, we will immediately call the landlord and attempt to work with them to house one of our clients in that space. So it's an extraordinary undertaking. If we had the housing available, we have the money, we could probably house up to a third of our currently homeless individuals and families. But again, we need help identifying those rooms and rental units. And I'd like to acknowledge two of the folks on the call here, Betsy and Linda. They've been working with me on what we refer to as Make a House a Home. We've reached out to the faith-based community, and we have churches and organizations adopting these 111 individuals that are moving from homelessness into a home with basics like linens, towels, pots, pans, cleaning items, spices, oil, things that you really need to create a home. And so that's been great. And I want to thank Linda and Betsy for the work that they've done to make that possible. I want to finish on something that I think I'd ask that you look into further. I'm just going to touch on it here, but the ALICE report, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed, refers to, and these are people that we know, they're the workers who educate our children, keep us healthy, make our quality of life possible. And it's, if I can explain it, that there's really two thresholds when HUD and others consider someone who is economically underprivileged, we'll say. And one is just the poverty rate, which for a single individual is probably around $12,000. But what we want to focus on is that next stretch. And that is, again, they're asset limited. They don't own a home. They don't own property, stocks. They're income constrained because they're working probably for a minimum wage, but they're employed. And the issue with this cohort of households is that they spend an inordinate amount of their money on rent, to the degree of probably 60, 70, 80% of their income goes to rent. Well, that's just not sustainable. Imagine for a minute that a car breaks down, a child gets sick, you have to miss a couple days of work. These households, it puts them at risk immediately. All right. And to give you some idea of the order of magnitude, I'm going to pull up something here so I can give you an idea. And I think you are going to be, very surprised when I share this with you. Let me share my screen. Bear with me here. Share. All right, there we go. Share. All right, this is by, think of it as breaking down the county to population points. This is the total households, all right, that are considered below the ALICE threshold. So what you find is there are locations, Lacucci, 60% of the households there fall into this category. If you add this up, it's about 200,000 households. I can't reconcile that with some of the other numbers, but I will say that I'd estimate that about 48% of our households here in Pasco County fall into this category where they're at risk for homelessness because of their wages and their expenses just don't meet the need. So I think that was probably about 10 minutes. I know it was fast, but I would encourage you, this ALICE report is available. It's made possible through the United Way. Each state, each county participates. The data and the information is, I find it very alarming. And with the COVID situation, it has only exacerbated this to a degree that we don't know what we'll see. I don't want to suggest we'll have a tsunami of evictions, but we are anticipating that when the moratorium does end, more and more of our ALICE households are going to fall into the category of homelessness. So I hope that I just touched on a few things, but I hope it whets your appetite and you'll pursue these things beyond the event tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dawn. Sally, do you have any questions for Dawn? And anyone can type into the chat as well.
Okay, yes, there is one here. It's from Cindy, and she said, how will the raise in the minimum wage impact economic security in Pasco? I guess anybody might be able to answer that, but
yes,
yeah.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I will say the attempt to make a national wage at $15, while admirable, it doesn't begin to address the minimum standard of living that's required. And I don't believe even at $15 an hour, working full time is sufficient to take someone out of this ALICE area. It's just the expenses today and childcare, health. It's just a burden that you really can't bear when you're making minimum wage, even if it were to go to $15 an hour, which I don't think will happen in the immediate future, but I think over time it will move that way.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if there's any. Is the biggest factor the lack of low cost housing?
Yes, and I wouldn't refer to it as low cost. I think you could say workforce housing. You know, whether you're an EMT, you know, an officer of the law, our teachers. I mean, it's just it's making it impossible for those individuals to work and live in the same community. And what we're going to see is they're going to have to live outside of some of these areas and commute in order to make ends meet. So yes.
So I would like to challenge, well, sort of say another spin on the cost of housing, because some of us, like including myself, came from other communities. And the two other communities I came from, the cost of housing was exorbitant. And when I came here, I thought, oh, I've got it made. This is great. The cost of housing is way less than the areas I came from. And that is true. But I'm very much looking forward to what Mike is going to talk about, because the issue here, I don't think is as much the cost of housing, is the people that live and work here are not making enough for even the cost of housing here. So what Don was talking about was the fact that there's so many families that are cost burdened, that are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And it is, you know, you can still buy a house in Pasco County for $125,000, $135,000, $150,000. There are plenty other communities around the country where you can't even get a condo for that price. So, you know, so it is inexpensive when you compare it. But when you have the wages that we have here, where people are still not making a wage to afford that level of housing, that's where the disconnect comes. And I think that's what we experience mostly in our community.
And ironically, it is less expensive to own a home in Pasco than it is to rent, which is extraordinary in my mind.
So all the new apartments that you see going up, there's always a lot of discussion about 54 and the apartments that are there. They're market rate apartments. They're at a 94% occupancy. And if I'm not mistaken, the one bedrooms start at $1,300 or $1,400 a month.
Yeah.
There are lots of issues here. That's all I'm saying. Sally, are there any other questions, or should we go to our next panelist?
I don't see any other right now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. Mike Bishop is our last panelist. Mike started his career in financial services as a financial advisor. In 2012, he founded Big Storm Brewing Company, the first craft brewery in Pasco County. And after selling the business in 2019, he joined the staff at the Pasco Economic Development Council as the Director of Stakeholder Engagement. He's responsible for stakeholder relations, a community-facing role that strives to enhance the Pasco EDC and county's relationships amongst business leaders. Mike is a strong community advocate in Pasco and currently sits on the Pasco County Government Tourism Development Council, Pasco County Sheriff Safety Town, and Sunrise of Pasco. He's the board chair. He's a graduate of Leadership Pasco class of 2017, the Pasco County Citizens Academy, and is Rotarian with the Newport Richey Rotary. Okay, Mike. They've spotted you as the closer here.
It's funny. Thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me. And what a collaborative event here, because I probably couldn't have been queued up any better and being the business side of it here. So let me go ahead and pull up my presentation to go through, and I'm going to keep it extremely high level. I do want to start with a little bit of groundwork on what the EDC is and what we do. Typically, when I go out and speak to different organizations, there's always questions as far as the different facets of economic development we cover. And I can tell you, being in economic development for the past only year now, I've still gotten to observe that we do plenty of things in economic development, much more than your standard economic development organization. So just a quick overview on us. Who are we? We are a 501c3 public-private, started in 1987. I do want to focus on a little bit on our mission to stimulate balance and diversify growth. The reason I want to focus on that is I have to tie in a little bit of what we were just talking about with workforce. Things that relate to increasing jobs and having jobs available for this workforce are all under our purview, as well as recruiting new businesses and working with entrepreneurs, possibly taking some of the people that are underemployed or are looking for new opportunities due to COVID and the strain that has caused, to try and harness some of that entrepreneurial spirit as well. So it's really across the board, a lot of different things. I can go on for hours. I typically start with a joke. I have a short 100-page deck. It's not that much of a joke. This one is very short though, so I'll keep getting through this. We're actually on the last year of our current strategic plan that covers a myriad of topics. I'm sure forming up our next strategic plan is going to be very interesting based on the current landscape that we're in right now. But you can see it covers those facets of workforce, as well as working on our own inventory of businesses and focusing on them to make sure that they have the resources that they need to succeed, especially with current challenges. And at the end of this presentation, I'll start going through a little bit of the COVID resources and the things that we really experienced at the beginning of the crisis, which is a great tie-in back to Marcy and Brian and what they were talking about their timeline with their grants, because simultaneously we were also operating a grant through Pasco County. So we'll get through to that. So typically people, when they think of economic development, it's always about recruiting businesses. That's the primary focus of economic development, is going out there across the country, even internationally in normal years, and attracting these businesses to come and create jobs for our community. One of the things that's starting to turn in our favor is we have always been known in Pasco as a bedroom community where our workforce is going south for the most part into Hillsborough and into Pinellas. We are starting to create these jobs to turn that flow around and create a live, work, play atmosphere. And that's through successful MPUDs, the master plan developments, new enterprises that are coming in and creating exciting new jobs in manufacturing, all the way through into financial services. And this is a collaborative effort, not just with all of our nonprofit organizations, fellow community nonprofits, but also with higher education and training this workforce that's able to fill these jobs that are coming in. So there's a lot of different wheels spinning in that part. And like I mentioned before, also helping startups, and that's an entirely other subject that I can cover. I'm going to go through this really quick. So please, just like Don had mentioned, if there's any further questions on beyond this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to go into any of these topics in a much greater detail. So how we're funded, and just to set the framework a little bit, because we do have that strong partnership with the county as really we can say our primary investor, if you will, in our MOU with the county. We also have funds that we received from the Penny for Pasco sales tax referendum. If you may recall, that was something that was voted on by the Pasco voters. And this is actually the second penny that we're going through right now and coming up in a couple years. So that'll be coming up on the ballot very soon. So Penny for Pasco, keep it going. Part of that goes towards economic development in this penny, which helps us fund these programs like workforce that helps our employers in understanding the workforce that's available in training, like the entrepreneur program, Smart Start, like our international programs, our Ready Site programs. So there's a lot of different pieces that Penny for Pasco helps us with, as well as rely on private investors. And these are different businesses and community leaders here in Pasco that believe in the altruistic nature of what we do, that if we're going out there and we're helping businesses, that in turn, this will also trickle down to helping the community. So just a quick snapshot. So since 1995 and some stats, we've helped companies create close to 15,000 jobs here in Pasco County and invest almost $2 billion into the community in capital expenditures and setting up their businesses. And that's filling nearly 11 million square feet. And that's across different industries. We have 6 different target industries that we really work on to recruiting new businesses. And that's in advanced manufacturing, life sciences, aerospace, defense, logistics, distribution, professional services, as well as there's always one that eludes me. I'll get back to it. But there's many different businesses that we're assisting and we're going after. But I do want to make mention, because this is something that Marcy has just left off with, these industries are targeted due to the wages, and we're specifically targeting jobs that are above the current annual average wage for Pasco County citizens. Incentives typically get brought up in economic development, and that's always a hot topic that a lot of people that are outside economic development go into, but that does not even get explored unless we're over 115% of the average annual wage here. It's not just about creating standard jobs, it's about creating better jobs for our community and the residents here. So just to quickly go into some of the COVID specific, and this is a lot of data here, but I felt it necessary to show, because when we went into when everything went into COVID land, we did a myriad of different things, and part of it was the Pasco Emergency Business Grant. I have to give a lot of credit to our Board of County Commissioners and just the amazing effort that they put forth in caring for not just the individuals of the county, like you've seen in previous presentations, but also for the businesses in the county. They immediately identified and said, hey, we need to help businesses that have just basically closed their doors because of what's happening. So we were able to move very swiftly, and through June, we're able to award over 1,200 of these emergency grants, which moved over $6 million directly into these businesses' pockets to pay for things like overhead, leases, and help with payroll, and just their standard things. Remember back, this was at the beginning of PPP, and everybody is scrambling to get their applications in. I think things have gotten a little more formalized and have calmed down. There's more options there now, but businesses were still scrambling to get some funds and some relief. So we were able to move very fast on that. We're also able to reach out to our other manufacturers about potentials for making emergency products, PPE products, to see if we can jump in on anything that was maybe required by the feds if they wanted us to produce goods under the Defense Act. If you remember, that was a discussion that early on. And we also went through and talked to our existing companies just to see if they were open, to see what assistance we can offer. Part of the grant I do also want to mention is that we wanted the businesses to also, we wanted them to get financial relief, but we also wanted to give them other additional resource and education and things that could help them pivot their business due to COVID. So you'll see that we actually, I think that's in the, yes, over here in virtual classes, we had over 1,000 virtual class participants, which was just amazing to watch. And I gotta tell you, I attended a lot of these, and many businesses took a lot out of these classes and helping them kind of rethink their strategy now that they had to do things maybe more digitally, or had to overcome service challenges with PPE, where to get PPE, what was necessary, those types of things. So a lot of work on that part to make sure that our businesses were able to overcome the current challenges, but also plan for the future and what that future, will happen, what we will see. I do want to close, and not on this slide, but just on a high note, when it comes to business recruitment at the EDC, we are seeing an uptick in interest for our county, which is amazing. It's really taken a somewhat of a 180. If you recall, city development have become very popular, and urbanization, and people wanting to go to downtowns and have walkable downtowns. Well, we're starting to see, especially up north, as they're in lockdowns and businesses are starting to feel more of a pinch that may have been closed longer, they're exploring other opportunities down here in Florida. Our pro-business environment and great tax environment has them looking, and Pasco County is uniquely positioned because we do have a workforce here that is talented, and we also have land for these businesses to spread out and grow. And recent announcements like our Moffitt Cancer Center, that's going to be just a game-changing project for the entire county here. That's going to span over 15 to 20 years. Addition of companies like Santander, Consumer USA, that's taking over the old Target building at the Suncoast in 54, adding 800 jobs. We have some heavy hitters starting to come in, and it's really quickly escalating the changes here in Pasco County. We typically take the blame for the traffic on 54, and we apologize for it, but we're also very proud of it. So I'll end there, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Mike. I think there was probably so much more to explore there. And yes, that was my speeding comment there. So I did want to put together a question, and sorry, Sally, but before we get to what you
That's
see
okay.
there, because I couldn't figure out how to type it. So I understand that we bring in businesses that are going to bring higher wages. That probably also impacts the cost of housing, right? So you bring in people with higher salaries, that impacts housing. But what about citizens that are here that don't have the skill set to go beyond those lower wage jobs? So, if we're not going to raise our minimum wage to 15 as the voters, the voters would like to do that over time. But what about those? What are we doing for those citizens that live in Lacoochee and Newport Richey to help them have economic opportunities?
Yeah, that's great. I'm very glad you brought that up. So I briefly touched on our Workforce Connect program, and part of the efforts with that program is partnering with other organizations here in the county. And one that comes to mind specifically is AM Skills, which is an organization that is really going across the Bay Area and bringing workshops mobily to people, and basically trying to train them up in manufacturing jobs that are good paying jobs and very necessary jobs. And they're having fantastic success going out and working with people that don't have the experience. They connect them with the employers. We assist in bringing employers in for them. And we collaborate very well in trying to get those people who are underemployed trained up and able to take in jobs in manufacturing. That's just one piece. We also participate in veterans job fairs. We just did one with Representative Gus Bilirakis. We show up for that. So we are in tune with a lot of the different organizations that are trying to help out with people that don't have the skill set yet. We have these jobs coming in, so we want our residents to have those skills to fill those jobs.
Right. Thank you. Sally?
Yes. Yeah, this question is for all the panelists, and it is, what activity are you involved in that you feel will have the strongest positive impact on economic recovery from the COVID outbreak? I don't know if Brian wants to go first, since he spoke first, and then we'll go along that way.
Sure, absolutely. So I really think, honestly, from an impact standpoint, a lot of the programs that Marcy and I highlighted tonight are making the most financial impact right now. Again, just highlighting almost $10 million out into the community for rent and mortgage assistance, and really with no end in sight to the federal funding that is coming down, and the funding that is constantly being updated, giving us longer parameters to put that money out into the community, as well as changing the amounts of money that we're getting. I think that those are going to have the most financial impacts directly tied to COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. Marcy, what do you think?
So I think that all too often we connect economic prosperity or stability with higher paying jobs and, more money. But really what it comes down to is when people are stably housed, and their quality of life improves, and they're able to engage in the community and shop at the local stores and things like that. So my most impactful activity right now is the housing surge. For us to be taking 30% of our homeless population and put them into permanent housing, I think will be transformative for our community, for the individuals that experience it, and for quality of life as a whole, which will extend to positive economic outcomes for the entire community. So that's what I'm most excited about. And we're well on our way. And I think that all of us on the phone call will be able to see exactly what I keep promising the commissioners, is you'll be able to see the difference in our community. I do want to make a quick shout out to AmSkills. That does happen to be one of our community development block grant projects. So the county, through the county commissioners, is giving well over $500,000 to AmSkills to relocate and get a new building so they can expand their manufacturing classes. And we're proud to partner with them. And this is it's a great example of how there are programs in our community to help our residents here gain skills so they can get higher wage paying jobs.
Well, that is very encouraging. Very good news. Don, what do you think might be your most important thing that's helping?
Well, I have to agree with Marcy, and that is our housing surge right now.
Yeah.
So I would ask each of you to take very seriously when you see a rental property, whether a room, a trailer, a house, it doesn't matter. Take a picture, send it to rentinpasco, RENTIN Pasco @gmail.com. And that would be a great service to the community.
Okay, thank you. And Mike, what do you think has been, or the most impact, will have the most positive impact?
I would have to say our most positive impact currently is working with our existing business here in Pasco and these business leaders. There's still a lot of uncertainty going on and question marks, and we're continually trying to get our businesses here resources and information that helps them maintain and still continue to grow their business. Our main focus is let's not lose these jobs. Let's not have any problems in current business operations that may cause a business owner to make a hard decision on their staff. So our highest and best use is still getting out there in the community and doing those things with our current businesses to make sure that they still remain positive.
That sounds good. Okay, another question is also to all the panelists. 2020 highlighted how many of our citizens live on the edge financially. Those citizens not impacted economically seem to distrust that people really need resources. Any thoughts about how to change the narrative, at least locally? Brian, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world where day to day we actually, work with these citizens and live with these citizens and do our best part to help these citizens. So, to us, it's a very, very real reality. And I think that, one way to change that narrative is to be the voice of that, to tell the stories of those citizens. I had a lot of heartbreaking stories when it came to CARES about parents, single parents, whether it be a single mother or a single father who called us and said, hey, because you helped us with this, because you helped my family with this rent or this mortgage, I can now provide Christmas presents for my children, or I can now provide food. We had several families who lost food because their power was turned off. And those stories are all too often and all too real for us. So I think by being the mouthpiece and conveying the reality of that and what's going on in our community, my hopes is at least that is an eye opener for the individuals who don't see that on the day to day, because in this world, we see it all too often.
Right. And forums like this too help get the word out and everything. So hopefully we can help with that on our end of it. Marcy, what would you say?
Well, I agree with Brian. I think that that we need to be the voice for people that don't have a voice, and so many of our vulnerable citizens do not have a forum to have a voice. And I think let's look at what the public narrative is. The public narrative is very quick to share about the people who have gamed the system. The people that are taking PPP money and buying Lamborghinis and yachts, and the people that forged Publix memos so that they could get their rent paid and all those kind of things. So why are we not sharing the real need and the real true stories of people? Why don't they get as much time, if not more? And I think for those of us that are in the system and working with very passionate team members that want to help people, I think that the most important thing we could do is make sure that we deliver our services effectively, efficiently, and equitably, and we make sure they're getting out to the right people and the people that really need it.
Okay, thank you. Don?
I think putting a face on homelessness or those that are disenfranchised is the best thing we can do. In our Make a House a Home effort with local churches, when they collect these goods, we're asking that they deliver them to the families or the individual themselves. And in doing that, you put a face on homelessness, you get some idea, you see that these folks are, they're no different than us. Circumstances were far worse than what any of us have experienced. And it just, I think it leads to compassion and an understanding that can transcend some of the bad things that we experience.
Oh, definitely. Face to face really does do the most effect, I think. And Mike, what do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, just to kind of follow what Don was saying with compassion, I mean, big buildings and equipment are great in business, but that's not what makes business happen. It's the people. And we need to take care of our people and understand that these people that have challenges need assistance. And that's a real thing. We went through a very, very rough time, and we're still going through that right now. We're all together. Divisiveness needs to stop. And we can do that starting in our county by working together in different nonprofits, different organizations with our county. If we're out there and we take one step at a time individually, together we'll be stronger.
Okay. Very good. I have another question here. What is the major factor that is needed to ensure economic security to for families in Pasco County? I think I might know the answer. Go ahead. I don't know
I would start with affordable housing.
Right. I agree.
Ditto. Can you say ditto?
You can. We are moving past that hour. Is there any closing statements that any of our panelists want to share? Something we didn't touch on that you think is important? Because I think we will show this on our YouTube channel, and we have a lot of members who are not able to attend during our events. But this is something that a lot of people not only don't understand and don't have any idea about, including all of us, but they're always asking, what do we do as well? How do we make a difference? Do our legislators need to know that we want our community taken care of? What can happen at a state level? Where can we volunteer? Those types of things.
So I would say when it comes to housing and affordable housing, my message to the county commissioners and to anybody that listens is that we want a community that has, that takes care of all the members of the community with balanced housing needs. So from somebody coming out of homelessness to market rate $1 million homes, we want to make sure that all of that is provided for in our community. And on the lower end of the spectrum, we need as a government basically to intervene and subsidize and to create policies and procedures to make it more affordable or more, just like you would bring in businesses, you want to bring in developers that are willing to, develop in your area and to do that. And we don't have to intervene like that in the market. The market rate stuff takes care of itself. But that's the most important message that I believe we could all advocate for is taking care of the needs of everybody in our community for housing. And it needs to be balanced. Right now, Pasco County has a high amount of single family owner occupied units. It's like 72% to 20% rental housing. That's not balanced. And rental housing doesn't just affect low-income people. It affects seniors downsizing. It affects millennials that, saw their parents get burned by the housing market and they're not willing to become new homeowners at this point. So it really needs to expand. And I think that we do have lots of land. We're not landlocked by like St. Petersburg or Tampa or some of the, we have some great opportunity here, and to use that opportunity wisely would impact everyone.
Wonderful. That was a great statement, Marcy. It sounds like you do that quite frequently, I'm going to guess. Anything else from our panelists? I want to thank all of you for your time and more importantly for what you do in service to our community, for those that we know and those that we do not know. So thank you so much. We will take this information with us and hope to do more with it as Pasco citizens and as the League of Women Voters. So thank you to all of you. Have a wonderful evening. And thank you to everyone who joined us this evening and hopefully in the future on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much.